Ahí va a llegar el gol del Arsenal. Ozil. Marca Mesut Ozil.
Bellerín, otro defensor, otro disparo, Monreal, gol. Marca el futbolista español, marca Nacho Monreal. Pim, pam, pum.
This is Arsecast Extra.
Hello and welcome to another Arsecast Extra, as always, with James from Blog. James, good morning to you.
Good morning to you too, Andrew. How are you doing today?
I'm all right. You know, am I calm? Am I sanguine? I don't know what I am exactly. I'm a kind of churning maelstrom of different thoughts and opinions and things, you know.
You know what you need?
What?
To chill you right out.
What's that?
A little trip to Dubai. Nice, relaxing trip. Business trip.
Yeah,
to Dubai.
7-hour flight there, 7-hour flight back. You know,
Honestly,
even in
you would come back
class.
fresh as a daisy.
I could last probably 45 minutes of this podcast if I did.
I'd say the first half of this podcast, you'd be absolutely fine.
Yeah, have to come off at halftime and be replaced by, I don't know, the man from East Lower. Who knows?
Some up and coming young blogger, who can't take a corner.
That's him, all right. Oh my God!
Let's all just go to Dubai. I think that's for the rest of the season. I will have to be attending to business matters by a pool in Dubai.
I mean, that is, you know, one of those things. If Willian had gone out yesterday and played out of his skin and, you know, been really effective and everything else, you would not give a single shit if he went to Dubai or to Dubai and back and there again, and you just would not care.
He can commute from Dubai, as far as I'm concerned, if he plays well.
Yeah, but when you go to Dubai and then you have to come off at halftime because of a muscular injury, a muscular strain, like I thought it was at half, I was like, oh, well, you know what? Willian's been pretty indifferent once again, and Arteta isn't standing for it, and Reece Nelson's coming on, and like, fuck it, let's go for it. Why the fuck not? And then you realise that it's because, you know, he had an injury, and maybe it's got nothing to do with flying to Dubai, but when you fly to Dubai and then that happens, people are going to put two and two together and make four, whether four is the answer or not.
Yeah, there's lots of reasons, like in a pandemic and with all the international games that have been played, that players could get injured at the moment. There are a lot of kind of justifiable excuses. I'm not sure that is one. I have to say, I don't know if you felt this, but in the first 10 minutes, I did think Willian looked slightly more alert. There was a moment on the left wing where he went past somebody. You know, he just sort of accelerated beyond the fullback, and I thought, here we are. I genuinely thought maybe he's been put out there and told, you know, you fucked up by going to Dubai. Yeah. You're going to play today and I want to see something from you. And I thought in that first 15 minutes, maybe we will. And then by the time he came off at half time, I, like you, assumed it was tactical because his performance had just sort of plateaued as it tends to. I mean, a really frustrating one. I made a joke on Twitter saying, you know, one of Mikel Arteta's non-negotiables is starting Willian. But it does feel like that.
Yeah, we have a few questions on that, to be honest. I mean, I did have the horror. Did you have the horror when you saw the game kick off with Willian?
Yeah, every Arsenal fan did. Every Arsenal fan felt that.
I looked at it and it was like, well, here's team selection. Looks like it's Aubameyang down the middle. And then it's like Willian. I mean, did they do that on purpose just to give us a fright, do you think?
Did you hear Arteta pre-game? Arteta, in his pre-match interview to Sky Sports, he kind of said, you know, that he was asked about playing Aubameyang centrally, and he was like, you know, he's done very well playing in his natural position on the left, but it's always an option for us to look at. And, you know, there was just a little bit of, how can I put it, resistance, I think, from the manager. You know, I do get the sense that it's a change he's made not entirely happily. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I kind of get the sense that some of the team selections were, it's not quite that these are things he wants to do, more that the things that he has been doing have been so poor that he's got literally no choice than to do something. Do you know what I mean?
Well, In that respect, I mean, presumably you, like me, were slightly intrigued and maybe even excited. Imagine applying that word to a football match by this starting lineup, given that it ostensibly had Aubameyang up front, it had Joe Willock in it had Nicolas Pepe in it.
Yeah.
There were changes there.
Absolutely. I think we have to acknowledge that, and that those were things that many of us have been looking for, to play Aubameyang as a central striker, to bring in Nicolas Pepe, not necessarily shift Willian to the left-hand side, but I do feel like team selection was in some way informed by the international break, and I think he didn't want to start Bukayo Saka because he's played a lot, and you can understand that. So I think the selection of Willian was literally, the other option was to play Pepe, start Lacazette again, and play Aubameyang on the left. And that would not have maybe pleased people because we're starting Lacazette because who was quite bad in the Villa game, but Willian was also quite bad, so he had to pick one of them. And I don't know, it sort of encouraged me, and I have to say I thought maybe the first 10-15 minutes from an Arsenal perspective were not bad. No. I mean, I'm not saying it was great, but I don't think it was particularly bad. There was some weird passes from Dani Ceballos in the first 10-15 minutes.
Yeah.
Don't know what was going on there.
Someone warming up on the sidelines in their kit or something. There were two that he just played very emphatically out of play. With
nobody anywhere near them, So, look, that aside, I thought there was some intent. I thought there was some energy, and then it just sort of stopped.
It was around 25 minutes, half hour mark for me that the game really seemed to swing in Leeds' favour. One of the things that really struck me was just the sheer energy levels. I mean, I know it's a Bielsa team and you sort of got to expect that, but Arsenal looked, like they'd all been on a plane for 7 hours. Do you know what I mean? They really did look leggy as compared to Leeds. Yeah,
you get to the 26-minute mark and it's relatively even in terms of what's been going on. Both teams have had 4 shots, passes, more or less the same. Crosses, Leeds have 8, Arsenal have 6. Where there's a big difference for me, and I think it tells you a lot about the way Leeds play and why maybe we found it difficult to deal with them. 15 tackles Leeds had with more possession compared to our 3. And then from, by the time you get to halftime, Leeds have had 13 shots to our 5, so they've added another whatever that is, 9 shots in the final 20 minutes, and we've had just 1, and then the passes and the possession is way in Leeds' favour, so what he tried to do with the initial team selection certainly didn't work in the first half.
No, and Leeds provide a very specific challenge, and one of the things I noticed during the game was that obviously they press really high, and that made it awkward, shall we say, for Arsenal to do the thing they customarily do, which is play out from the back. Yeah,
I was going to ask you about this.
Yeah,
because one of the things that Arteta has said constantly is that he wants his team to play out from the back. He's nervous when we kick it long because the ball comes straight back at you. And without anyone to really aim at, up the pitch, I think we were aiming our goal kicks towards Nicolas Pepe.
We were.
Maybe because he's the best guy in the air, that sort of thing. I don't quite know. But, we don't really have anybody who can do that job. I was just a little bit surprised that there wasn't more of an effort to try and play out from the back.
Well, I think they were obviously worried about it. You're absolutely right. Pepe, I think he won 3 of 6 aerial duels, which I've never seen a stat like that for him in a Premier League game. And if you look at Leno's passing, it was all much, much longer. They looked to kind of go, over the press effectively. But one of the big problems for this Arsenal team in this match was they were so bad at progressing the play, and that's because their one way of usually progressing it is to play out from the back, and they just didn't fancy doing that against Leeds. I think they just thought it was too great a risk, which is a compliment to Bielsa and Leeds in some ways, but it just left us without much of an exit route, I felt. And funnily enough, you talk about starting Willian over Lacazette. I mean, Lacazette's not great holding the ball up, and I know it's a sort of bugbear for some people that he gets praised for it, but he probably would have been a better target for some of these long balls than Pepe would have been. So the thinking didn't appear entirely joined up to my mind.
Yeah, and look, I think, it's not like that was something we made up on the fly, I think. I guess there was some discussion about this.
Oh, for sure.
Going into the game. So what I'm curious about is if you're implementing something different, like basically your goalkeeper is kicking it long, why wasn't there more energy, more effort to try and win those second balls?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I've got the numbers up now. So Leeds' goalkeeper, where is he? What's his name? Melier. So he was completing almost 70% of his passes, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Arsenal, Bernd Leno, 45%.
Right.
And he played 25 passes into the opponent's half, which is, of his 40 passes, the majority. So it was a definite decision and change.
How many of those were successful? Do you know?
24%.
Right.
So, half the time, about, roughly, we were giving them the ball back.
It's strange, It is strange.
Yeah,
because I know Leeds are energetic. I know they press high. But, part of the way that we might have been able to create more and hurt them was to work our way around the press, And there didn't seem to be any effort at all to do that from the start. It was like we said, well, we're not going to do this today. And there was basically no variation at all. And I know the second half is a little bit different because of what happened and the fact we were down to 10 men. But yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting, and actually sort of my first reaction watching the game was one of, wow, in the moment I felt Arsenal really missed David Luiz and Thomas Partey, say, because I was like, we're just not building the ball up through this middle of the pitch. But when you look at the fact that Leno was going long time after time, I mean, Luiz probably would have been less of a weapon. I don't know. Maybe Arteta would have been more confident to play out from the back with Luiz there instead of Rob Holding. I'm not sure, but
maybe.
It's interesting playing against a Leeds team who are so uncompromising in their principles, and I think that's something Arteta would probably find admirable. And playing out from the back has been such a core principle of his.
Yeah. Well, we compromised. Yeah, we compromised our own.
It's strange.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, what else can we say about the first half other than I was glad it was over? I thought we were lucky.
They were on top, weren't they? They really should have scored in that period.
Yeah, they had some chances, in fairness, which they didn't take, thankfully. And halftime came, and I thought, well, look, there is a chance here to do something at the break, to sort of refocus your players, to I don't know, maybe change something in the way that you're going to play. And there was obviously the change then, Reece Nelson coming on for Willian, but after 3 or 4 minutes you're down to 10 men. And look, I think it was a rank piece of play acting by the Leeds player. No question about it. He made a meal of it. The contact does not merit that kind of a reaction, but it's a red card all day long. You just cannot put your head on somebody like that and make that kind of a motion. You can just about sometimes get away with, when the two go together at the same time, sort of head to head, and there's a bit of like pushing like a pair of crap stags. But there was. When you look at the replays, a very slight but very definite motion from Pepe towards the Leeds player. He fell into a trap, you might say, and we can't argue with the red card.
No, the consequences for doing that on a football pitch. It's not the most aggressive or violent action you'll see, but we live in a world where there's a lot of grey areas around what's a foul and what's a penalty and what's a red card. But there's no real grey area, I don't think, around this one. You absolutely know what you're getting into. And Just so disappointing, I think, because I think, like everybody else, I was excited to see Pepe play, and there were a couple of moments in the first half where you sort of see that's why you pick him, because he can produce, he has a miscued cross that hits the bar, he flashes another shot wide, and you're like, well, at least he brings that element of productivity in the final third. But then to stuff up the opportunity in that fashion, I mean, I think Mikel Arteta's faith in Pepe is a fragile thing. Yeah. And I think he did some real damage to that last night.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's what's the most disappointing aspect of this, is that I really wanted Pepe to have a good game. Really, because, like everybody, I'm tired of watching Willian, who has to be... It just frustrated me that he passed up an opportunity, not simply by not playing particularly well. I thought he was okay in the first half. There were some moments, like you say.
I thought he was fine.
Yeah. He was fine. But to sort of self-destruct or self-sabotage in that way, it's just... Yeah, I think he's got a long road back from here, to be honest. Because like you, I think Arteta isn't fully convinced by him. And I think that's, being diplomatic. Mm-hmm. If you truly believe in a player, you don't go out and bring in an aged veteran from a rival club to play in his position. You don't do what we did in the transfer market.
No, and this was only his second league start of the season, and that tells you its own story too.
So I mean, what now for Pepe? Where does this leave him? Obviously, it leaves him with a 3-game ban, so he's not going to play against Wolves. He's not going to play in the North London Derby. He's not going to play in, is it Burnley after that?
Yeah. Do you think he'll play on Thursday?
See, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because it's like, well, when a player gets sent off for something that's stupid, do you then reward them with a start? Or is playing against Molde a reward? Because we've got to go, that's away, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it might be a case that, he starts. What's the option? I suppose Reece Nelson is the option.
Yeah. I guess people like Nelson and Smith Rowe will feel they want a shot.
I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on what his reaction is to it and what his what Arteta's reaction to his reaction is. Because, clearly the manager was really, really pissed off with Pepe after the game. Really pissed off. Like, I am...
Yeah, seething. I think he was seething, really.
Yeah. Where do you stand on what Arteta said?
Yeah.
Because, for me, he said something along that it was unacceptable. I think that's, I don't really have a big problem with that, because I think it is unacceptable for a player to be stupid. It's not the end of the world, but, it is not the same as, for example, making a late challenge or doing something daft in the box.
Trying to deny a goal.
Yeah. At least there's some intent to, I don't know, play the game. That's not in the game. That's sort of outside the rules of the game. So I can understand why he said it was unacceptable. But there was something else which I think was maybe a little bit careless. He said something along the line. I'm going to get the quote up here now just so I can be 100% sure of it. He said, I really like the personality of the team when Pepe let the team down. Now that's it's pretty harsh. I think it's one thing to label his behavior and the red card and what led to it unacceptable. And I think he did let the team down. There's no question. But, I just wonder, is that the kind of thing that you keep? Is that the kind of thing you keep in-house?
I think maybe. I think, like I say, I think he was really, really angry, and you could see it in him. And I don't know what's happening in Mikel Arteta's head, but I'd have a pretty good guess that there was a sort of slight feeling of, I told you so. Do you know what I mean? A feeling of like, I knew I was right in my hunch about this player. And I'm not saying that he is right, but I'm just saying that it's clear that is kind of how he feels. And I think he came away from this game probably thinking, that was a chance I shouldn't have given him, which is a terrible shame for the player. potentially a shame for the team. I think that is strong, to say publicly he let the team down. I mean, it's a different thing if you say, I've heard managers say quite frequently, Nico feels he's let the team down and he's apologised. Do you know what I mean? That's a bit different.
Yeah.
Arteta coming out and saying it is strong. But you're right in that, we don't know the full context of what happened behind closed doors. We don't know what Pepe stood up and said in the dressing room. We don't know to what degree he took ownership of it or not.
Yeah.
And maybe at that stage Arteta doesn't know because it's very
No, I mean that was his post-game interview on Sky.
Yeah.
No
time has passed really.
Yeah, and there probably hasn't been any kind of chat in the dressing room beyond, the whatever sort of anger or frustration you might have in that particular moment,
First sending off of his career. I mean, it's not like he's a guy who blows his top all the time. Sky showed the kind of build up to it, but I have to say, I didn't think there was sort of. It seemed like 6 of one, half a dozen the other. To be honest, to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't quite understand why he got so frustrated. Because there was a bit of pushing and what have you, and I think he pushes the guy first. If you look at the replay, I think he goes to push.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, he pushes him first, and the guy pushes him back, and it's like, what are you doing? What?
I mean, we don't know what was going on before that, but it does seem very, they're definitely both at it.
Yeah, for sure, and
But you say frustrated. I mean, is there a case that this is a frustration that he feels generally boiling over, or are we projecting too much there? Do you think the pressure to impress might have influenced this?
I don't know. Look, it's impossible to say, isn't it? He's been in the papers in the last couple of weeks talking about how he's frustrated at not playing more. Mm-hmm. And, he was given a chance. And like I said, I think the chance has come because of the need to change something in the team more than, Pepe being absolutely brilliant when he's played this season. I don't think that's true of anybody, to be honest.
No.
But I think when you do talk like that, you put pressure on yourself, I suppose, when you are given a chance. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I don't know. Look, it's out of character for him, and plenty of players down the years at Arsenal have done stupid things, and it was really stupid, and he deserves a 3-match ban for because he knows fine well, and everybody knows fine well, you cannot do that on a football pitch, particularly now, given that we have VAR and everything else. It's just rank stupidity. It would be a shame if this was sort of the end of him, though. I don't think we can afford to just say, well, that's it. No, we can't. I mean, we can't. We don't have the players to just sort of say, well, that's the end of Pepe now. He's had his chance. He's blown it. That's it. There's still a need to try and extract some value from this player, whether it's on the pitch in the next few weeks, because, I say this, with the transfer window in mind, but at the same time realising that Arsenal probably aren't going to do much. So, we need to extract some value from him on the pitch, and we need to maintain some value in him if he's a player that we no longer want and are looking to sell. You know what I mean? We can't just sort of... I think we have to be smarter in the way that we manage this. Which is...
Well, so far it's been, an investment that's gone badly awry, I think you have to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think, last night tipped it over into really disaster zone kind of signing for me. And that's not to be completely critical of the player himself. I just mean that as a deal, when you spend £72 million on a player and this is what you're getting, you cannot stand behind that deal.
No. And I think some of that is on the player, and I think some of that is on the club. It's a shared responsibility. Collectively, it hasn't worked out at this point. I agree with you. You can't be as simplistic as just to say, well, that's it, he's finished. But I do slightly. I mean, I feel like this was a significant moment, and either it'll be framed as he rose like a phoenix from there and sort of, managed to come back from the brink, or, we may reflect on it as kind of the beginning of the end. I think, I don't know, but it's such bad timing for him. That's the main thing. It's a terrible time for him to have to sit down for 3 games.
Does it feel a little bit like a tipping point in terms of what people think of him or think of the deal? Because, I know there are some people who are quite unconvinced by him as a player, and I can understand it. He's frustrating. But maybe has it gone sort of mainstream, if you like, now? That idea that this is a bad deal, that there's some talent in the player, and we've seen flashes of that talent, but not enough consistency. But as a transfer, we have to now look at it as a bad one.
I'm sure that there's a degree of that. I mean, I have to say, I have seen some stuff. Oh, by the way, we should touch on the kind of abuse element of this. And Arsenal and Leeds have put out a statement this morning, and it goes without saying that whatever your kind of critical opinion of the player, that's appalling. And social media is a pretty grim place in some recesses, and they need to do more to police that. But setting that to one side and just sort of analysing it technically, I do think that there are still a lot of people who empathise with Pepe. And I'm seeing that, at least on my timeline, this sort of sense of, he's not had the right support. He's not had the right formation. I think maybe sometimes as a fan base, we make a little too many excuses for him, because there's a goodwill and a desperation almost for that deal to work out and for it to be reflect positively on the club. I think with Pepe, we always say, well, you could tell he's talented, and that's sort of the given. Oh, there's talent there. But increasingly, I'm just of the opinion that talent is a relatively meagre part in what separates the very best from everybody else. And, Pepe may have as much natural talent as, say, a Mo Salah, but maybe there are other elements to a player like that, be that drive or application or a type of football intelligence that enable him to absolutely maximise that talent. Sorry to cut across you, but maybe being in a team that is effective as well, that plays to the strengths of the talents of the individual. I'm not saying that we should build a team around Pepe, but it's increasingly difficult to make individual assessments of players when, as a collective, there is this malaise. I mean, I think we're in a really interesting phase of this particular project because there was a lot of goodwill. There was obviously a lot of belief and a lot of hope and a lot of optimism that we could go in the right direction, or we were going in the right direction. We won a trophy, and it was, fantastic. And it's not that long ago since we've won a trophy. And I feel like at the moment we're a bit worn down with the way that we're playing, and understandably so. It's kind of hard to remember that I think we are capable of better than this. But, Arteta and I think the team are in a kind of a rut. And it felt to me yesterday, particularly I was looking at the first half, and at halftime I was sort of thinking, like, if we could just nick a win here, if we could just score a goal and nick a 1-0 win, it wouldn't be brilliant. It wouldn't be the answer to all of our problems, but it would be such a nice little building block, if you like, to go on to the next game and to try and do it. And we've sort of dug ourselves deeper into this rut, even if we did, in the end, come away with a point. Well, we sort of nicked a point, and we very nearly did nick a win. I mean, we had a chance, didn't we? Maybe 2 chances, depending on your opinion of the penalty incident.
Do you want to talk about that? Because, I think we had a question actually on it. Let's see here. I think it was from the Discord. Yeah, it was from Ash Richards 90 on the Discord. He says, we didn't deserve it at all, but another questionable VAR decision goes against us for the handball. Why do we get one show and decision made, and teams like one shot maybe and decision made, and teams like United get every angle possible to prove it should be given? Look, it feels very much like clutching at straws, and I'm absolutely admitting that, but I don't understand what's handball anymore.
I don't think anybody does, to be honest. I mean, I don't think that incident that we saw yesterday should be a penalty. That's my opinion.
I agree, but I've also seen much softer penalties given this season for similar kind of handball incidents.
Yeah. Well, I imagine the distinction that, I don't know, Dale Johnson will be wheeled out to provide on Twitter, is that the player is off balance, so he has less control over his body position at that point.
Okay.
But I agree that in a world where you're seeing handballs given for a ball coming at a player who can't even see the ball and it hits his arm, you're entitled to ask the question.
Yeah,
definitely.
I don't think we should dwell on it though, because it's not really the thing. What did you make of the way that we played with 10 men and Bukayo Saka's introduction? Made us more effective from an attacking perspective. So maybe those things are two separate things. Because
I think it suits us better. Frankly, I think that's the way that we have played more often under Arteta to an extent, to kind of sit in deep. And our best performances have been, maybe backs to the wall is a bit strong, but performances based more around structure and shape and hitting counterattacks, and actually in some respects we looked a bit more comfortable doing that. However, I don't think it should be overlooked that Leeds also had plenty of chances at the other end and were pretty unfortunate not to score. Yeah,
look, it was a couple of occasions it was poor finishing, hit the crossbar, hit the post, the woodwork 3 times. So you ride your luck in circumstances like that. I think we got away with it. I think the defenders did their best, but at the same time we were caused problems by Leeds, who took advantage of the extra men. So it wasn't a case that we simply sat there and made it really difficult for Leeds to take shots. They had shots, they had chances on goal. They had loads of chances on goal. We did have that brilliant chance from Saka. I mean, Saka, at 19 years of age, having come through our academy, has did more in that game than Pepe and Willian put together.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, I think, I don't think Pepe is the great hope of this Arsenal team. I think it is Saka. And I you saw how good he was. We had a chance, basically, as long as he was on the field. And, of course, worrying that he didn't last on the field. Hopefully nothing too serious. But, yeah, I mean, he was brilliant. And, yeah, I mean, if you look at that chance in isolation, probably you'd expect him to take it. I do think the goalkeeper does really, really well.
Yeah, I think so. I think so, yeah.
He's a good keeper, that guy. I remember he made I think it was his debut he played against us in the Cup last season. And you could see he's really good on the ball, very agile. I like it. But he kind of goes down. It's rare to see a keeper go down and then sort of manage to get back up and get round the ball in the way that he did.
Yeah, keeper did very well. Very well. I'm not going to be critical of Saka for missing that kind of a chance. I think that's kind of an element of his game that will come. But what a great run and what a brilliant pass from Hector Bellerin. I think if people...
Yeah, and a good run from him as well to open it up. I mean, Bellerin...
He's a mad player.
Yeah,
Hector Bellerin is a fucking mad player, right? The foul throw thing, now, referees are watching him when he takes his throws.
Because other players are getting away with it.
Yeah, for sure. I throw like this my whole life, mate. Wolfpack. But there was another foul throw, but he created a chance for Aubameyang in the first half.
Was that the one that he kind of mishit?
He slashed it, he really slashed it. He created that brilliant chance for Saka. And there was a moment in the second half, I think, again, it was Saka involved. There was a break between Tierney and Saka, and then there was a cross for Aubameyang in the middle, and he kind of turned, and he had a shot which was easy for the keeper. But when you look at the replay, who's up beside him supporting him? Hector Bellerin. Like,
Yeah.
what is his position?
Well, see, in the first half, I thought that he played a much more conservative role because we'd added an extra attacking player, I guess, in Joe Willock, and Bellerin seemed to me to be spending a lot more time in his own half in the first half. But in the second half, it felt like it opened up and he got forward a bit more. And he does drive in field. I mean, an interesting thing, he didn't make a single cross in the game. Kieran Tierney made 3. And I think it's basically because he doesn't go on the outside. He goes on the inside. He looks to play those kinds of passes through, which I think is probably more suited to his strengths. I think he's actually having a good season, Hector Bellerin. Somebody asked about him, and it wasn't about the foul throws, which I think are driving absolutely everybody insane. Let me just see if I can dig it out.
Yeah, I mean, look, I understand that, but...
Yeah. Hayder said, does Bellerin deserve more praise for his performances this season? Villa aside, his passing, dribbling and defensive attributes have notably improved, which suggests he's developing into a more complete and well-rounded right-back who's no longer solely reliant on his pace.
Yeah, I mean, who has who has more assists this season than Hector Bellerin in this team? I don't know that anybody does. And I think, he's never going to be the greatest defensive right back, but I don't think he is one of the big issues that this team faces. I think like in Tierney and in Bellerin, we've got 2 really good fullbacks. There are other areas of the pitch, I think, which require more focus.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think for me, he's more caught the eye going forward this season. But, I have been reminded of his ability to dribble, his ability to pass. I think we are seeing that more and more. I mean, it's interesting. We were talking about Pepe earlier and Saka to an extent. And, who's playing well in this team? And I think everyone you think of is kind of in the defensive third of the pitch. Because I would say Bellerin, Tierney, Gabriel, they're the guys really who I'd say are kind of, I suppose Saka might be another. But beyond that, the attacking players, you couldn't really say with confidence any of them are playing well.
Yeah, Bellerin has 4 assists this season, which is twice as many as the next best, which is Saka, Pepe, Willian and Joe Willock. And quite what that says about us in general is another question, but there you go. So, I mean, a 0-0, it is a point, I think, in the circumstances we should be relatively pleased with within the context of the game. Not saying it's, something we should be pleased about in general, but given what we had to face and given that we played with 10 men for so long and Leeds hit the woodwork and everything else, it's a point away from home, which in the grand scheme of things isn't the worst thing in the world. But of course, the wider context is that this was another game in which we were pretty unconvincing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think better teams than us will probably also drop points at Elland Road. But I think what's troubling is that, the kind of continued narrative of our problems going forward. I mean, Leeds do concede goals. That's the trade-off that they make in their style. Conventionally, they do concede goals, and they conceded 4 to Palace, 4 to Leicester in the build-up before. I know the 10 men thing is obviously a big factor in that, but we also conceded. I think we matched pretty much the Watford game. Well, we got close to it, didn't we, under Emery in terms of how many shots we allowed on our goal.
Watford was 30 odd, but yeah, I mean, I think
25 was it or something?
Yeah,
like that?
some of that you could say is down to the fact that that we were down to 10 men, but at the same time Leeds had whatever. Let me just get the stats up here. 13
and they
shots.
weren't all great chances.
No. I mean, chance quality you've got to look at as well. But Leeds had more shots in the first half when it was 11 versus 11 than they did when we were down to 10 men. So, you have to take the 10-men thing into it, but there wasn't enough in that first half to really take any comfort in the way that we played. I know it can often be different after halftime. You get in at the break and you reassess and you take stock and you look for more from your players, and it's not beyond the realms of possibility that we could have had a better second half with 11 men than we did in the first half, but we will never know that, so there's no point really speculating. Were you in any way discouraged by, I don't know, it's hard to measure, isn't it, the lack of response to the Villa game in the first half, if you like. So this is the first game after 2 weeks. You're fired up. You've got to go out. You've got to prove yourself, and we were dominated pretty much by Leeds.
I do think that we have to also take stock of kind of the other factors contributing to the performance. Things like the international travel, not having had the team together for any great length of time. Leeds suffered with that a lot less than we did. And I'm sure that's disruptive. And, classically, your first game back after an international break isn't the most flowing performance. But I do think there's a kind of another point, which is that, and I'm not saying that everyone was saying this, but, just changing the orientation of the front three is not going to fix everything. Clearly, I think Arsenal have got a problem in how they get the ball into the attack as well. And that still was an issue against Leeds. And maybe Luiz helps that. Maybe Partey helps that. We were without, maybe Saka starting helps that.
Yeah.
But I basically don't think there was a bit of a revolution in the starting lineup, but not really a revolution in what we saw. And it's probably unrealistic to expect that. But I think it shows, there's still a lot of room for improvement. And an interesting sort of discussion that's beginning to happen now is like, it's not great fun, is it, to watch? It's not entertaining, really, the way we play.
No, it's not. But then, it doesn't have to be entertaining. I think if it was effective,
people are entertained by goals, aren't they, principally? So if you're scoring goals and winning games, pretty much anything's acceptable, I think.
Yeah, that's true. And again, it's trying to find balance when your team hasn't scored from open play in whatever it is, 7 hours or 8 hours of football or whatever it might be, in the Premier League, it should be pointed out. I thought there was an interesting thing. I think maybe they said it on the commentary that, we've won 4 out of 8 in the Premier League.
Yeah.
But we've won 10
all our cup games.
10 out of 14 in all competitions. So, it's the Premier League that is informing the way people feel about things. Because obviously, you're not going to get too overboard with wins over opposition in the Europa League that you're expected to beat,
Absolutely, yeah.
But, who did we beat in the Carabao Cup? Leicester? Liverpool?
Yeah.
Did we beat Liverpool?
Yeah, we did.
So there,
penalties, was it? I can't remember.
So there's a lot getting sort of mixed up in our Premier League malaise,
Yeah, and I think we are 11th in the table, but the table is still very compressed. I'd point out that Man United are 10th, Man City are 13th. I really don't believe this table will look the same towards the end of the season. I think it will still be quite weird, but I don't think it will play quite like this. But I think being entertaining is something that does matter to Arsenal fans, and we talked about this a lot under Emery. But I do think that maybe particularly in an environment where there is no atmosphere, there are no fans, there is no kind of carnival of football, what you do on the field and the way that you play maybe has all the more pertinence and all the more kind of emphasis in people's minds. I don't know, but it's just an interesting conversation to keep track of, because my experience tells me it doesn't play well for Arsenal managers when the team's not fun to watch.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, I don't know what more to say about that game in particular. Is there anything else we need to talk about in the game before we go into some of the questions? Because I think there are some wider questions and debates and talking points that we might want to go into in part two.
No, nothing really more about the game. I think as well, the other reason the Premier League form is so pertinent is obviously who's topping the table right now, and I'm sure Arsenal fans are sort of looking at that and not feeling too happy about it. So we definitely need to address our Premier League form and position very, very soon.
Okay, let's take a break. We will come back with your questions and more in part two right after this. Welcome back to the Arsecast Extra. This is part two of the show where we answer questions that you sent to us on Twitter at Gunnerblog and at Arseblog on the Arseblog Facebook page, facebook.com/the Arseblog, and also on the Arseblog Discord chat server, which you get access to if you are an Arseblog member on Patreon. So some wider issues, some things that we need to get into here, I think, and it's sort of going back to something we discussed at the start. This one is from Be Well at Skipper AFC. He says, how negotiable are Mikel Arteta's non-negotiables? Seems you can play regularly like utter shit, then go to Dubai against the rules in the middle of a worldwide pandemic and UK lockdown and still start for Arsenal. They seem like fairly negotiable non-negotiables. And Tabo Matsepe, I think, who's at Spoko_May on Twitter, says, Ceballos fought with his own teammates, protected. Luiz, red card, twice, protected. I think Luiz had more than 2 red cards, didn't he? Maybe more. Willian breaks the rules. Tierney was causing a scene last night, protected. Pepe does a silly thing, thrown under the bus, same as Guendouzi. Is Mikel being consistent with how he treats players?
Yeah. Interesting question. I think no. I think he's not. And the only thing that's giving me sort of a caveat for that about the selection of Willian, for example, is how many external factors there were on this team's selection. I think maybe if Bukayo Saka comes back having not played 3 times for England, maybe he plays in that position. Do you know what I mean? So,
yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's right, or certainly I would like to think that if Saka were fully fit, he would have played ahead of Willian. I'm hoping anyway.
But it does seem, sort of as I joked in part one, as if Willian is kind of one of the first names on the team sheet. And, I do feel that one of the things Arteta brought to Arsenal when he first arrived was that idea of meritocracy, and I'm not sure that's quite there to the same extent at the moment. Unless he feels Willian is offering us things that other players don't, and we're not seeing it. I mean, I was struck. He is pretty safe in possession, and there's good and bad to that. I think yesterday his passing completion rate was in the 90s, which for an ostensibly attacking player, there's not really another guy at Arsenal who offers you that, well, there is, but he's not registered to play. And maybe that's in Arteta's thoughts, but yeah, I think it's odd. And the Pepe one is really interesting. I mean, to kind of throw a question back at you, there was a question from Gunnar Punner who said, modern day management is about nuance. Clearly, Pepe deserves blame for the red, but does anything you've seen about his personality make you think that a tough love approach will do anything other than ruin the player? Should the club be smarter about player management?
Yeah, I mean, look, he strikes me as kind of an introvert, Pepe. Mm-hmm. And maybe the arm around the shoulder approach has been tried maybe that's something they have done, and maybe now it's a more of a tough love thing, rise to the challenge, create a competitive environment in which he's got to, step up and flourish and everything else. Like, was the signing of Willian a signal to say, well, we don't think you're good enough, you're being replaced? Or was it like, let's see how you respond to this? I'm not saying the signing of Willian was smart in any way, by the way. So I don't quite know. I mean, we only know what we know from the outside, and from the inside, we don't know what kind of conversations have been had or anything like that. Look, he's obviously, Arteta, this is a very single-minded guy. And he wants what he wants, and he expects what he expects. And he makes decisions, and he's made big decisions. But you get judged on the consequences of those decisions or how they work out for you, So far,
when it works, you're a genius. And when it doesn't,
when it doesn't, you're open to question. I think he's open to question on some of the decisions that he's made, which I think is understandable when you're an inexperienced manager. Which isn't to make excuses for it, but it's how much tolerance you have for that. And that's an individual thing. Some people will say, well, look, this is a process. We're making changes. We wanted a change of culture. It was never going to be an easy road. There were always going to be bumps along the way, et cetera, et cetera. But people have a finite amount of patience.
I think the implication is that people kind of think maybe Arteta takes too hard a line, that it's kind of his way or the highway approach maybe isn't the most suited to getting the best out of certain players,
Yeah.
Which may be true, but I mean, Arteta will probably say, well, then they're not the players I want to work with. The problem is that, in some instances, they're the players he's got.
Yeah.
I mean, if Terry Dunn on the Discord asked, if a bid came in for Pepe in January, how much would you accept?
I don't know. Genuinely, I don't know. Because what if, you couldn't sell him without having somebody else to come in or somebody else to play in that position? I mean, the reality is that, I wanted Pepe to work and to take his chance yesterday because, I don't want to see any more Willian. I've had enough already of this guy. So the alternative to Willian is Pepe. The alternative to Pepe is more Willian. Yeah. So if you think that Arsenal are going to sell Pepe and go out and buy another right winger, then okay, I could get on board with that if you got somebody who can come in and do a job and play. But I don't know. I feel like, I don't know that that's realistic. I mean, if somebody offered you half your money back for him right now, would you take it? Probably would.
I think you would. I think half the money, because I think you'd think, what can we buy for that? We can probably get in this market a player who's at least as good and maybe is more suited to the culture and the team. So I think at that point you'd have to. I mean, it'd be an extraordinary amount of money to lose on a player. But it's a question of, do you see his value going in another direction? Do you see... I don't know. That's how and why it's important to not throw the baby out with the bathwater here. As frustrating as that red card was and as stupid as it was, we cannot behave in a way which reduces his value,
the value and attractiveness of a player anymore, because we've done it too often with players. We've got so many players who just have no value to us monetarily whatsoever because of because of how we've decided to use them or not use them.
That's a great point. I mean, so personally, I don't have much of a problem with Mikel Arteta kind of drawing lines in the sand and saying, you're on the boat or you're off the boat.
Yeah, discipline is important.
I think that's healthy. Yeah. But I think what is a problem is kind of cutting adrift the guys who aren't on the boat, and reducing their value significantly. I mean, the fact that we tried to sell Guendouzi in this summer and then ultimately had to let him go on loan on the final day because we couldn't find a buyer, that's not good. The fact that Mesut Ozil is sat at home costing us what it's costing us is not good. And we cannot let that happen to a club record signing again.
Yeah, particularly when you look at the way we are using the resources that we have. When you step back and think about it, we've sunk a lot of money into Willian, who's a 32-year-old, I'm not going to say has-been, because I think they brought him in with the expectation that he could produce at Premier League level because he's done it for years and years at Chelsea, right? So
I still think he's got to have something in his locker. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just don't believe in May he could play, or even in June he could play, and in November he just can't.
No, I mean, he's a better player than this, but so far what we've seen from him has been complete shit. It's been fucking dreadful. There's no two ways about it, and there's no making any excuses for it. But we've got now an issue with Pepe. We created some of that issue ourselves. I think the deal itself does not stand up to any kind of scrutiny. I think when you look at, the consequences of that deal and some of the others for the man who was director of football when that deal was made, put two and two together, folks. There's a lot going on there, right? We have the Ozil situation. Whatever your stance on that, paying that kind of money to somebody to sit at home and to send tweets to Piers Morgan during an Arsenal game. I mean, what the fuck is that? We have Socrates, out of the squad completely. We have Mustafi, he's going to leave on a free, right? We've got Cedric, who we gave a 4-year deal, a fucking 4-year deal to Cedric on pretty big wages because he was a free transfer. So you can guarantee that because this was a Kia fucking... what's the word I'm looking for here? Influenced deal that, the player came out of it pretty fucking well, I would say. So there's a 4-year deal on that guy who, somebody made a point here. Let me just see what it was about. I'll see if I can find it now in a second. So you have that one. You've got Pablo Mari, who we paid a lot of money for, certainly more than the £4 million Flamengo received. And then we go out and buy a £30 million centre half who plays in exactly the same position, the exact same position. So we're happy with Gabriel so far, and we're happy with Partey and what have you. But then we have the William Saliba situation where we've got a £28 million centre half not playing any football for us. So in terms of the resources that this club is using on players at various levels, at various stages in their careers, we are, it's bad. It's bad, and it needs to be put into some kind of shape. It needs to be put into some kind of shape. And, you can point the finger at Arteta for some of it, but you've also got to point the finger at those on high and those at executive level, whether they're still at the club or not at the club. It's why, for me, there's a huge, huge question mark over Edu. What the fuck is going on with these players and the way that we're spending all this money and wasting all this money in certain situations? I mean, it can't continue like that. Somebody has to come in, and maybe it's a process that will be ongoing from here on in, who knows, but somebody has to come in and say, this is really shit, guys. You need to do a lot better than this. Maybe it's Tim Lewis. Maybe he is the guy with the Cronkies. He's their man on the ground now, and things have been changing behind the scenes to an extent. Can any organisation look at that amount of waste and say that it's being well run? It's not.
Well, it's a consequence of, I think, how much change there has been. If you look at the summer of 2018, it's kind of the Sven Mislintat summer, Lucas Torreira, Matteo Guendouzi, Socrates. It's summer of 2019 is the Ralston summer, Pepe and David Luiz and what have you. And then summer 2020 is kind of the Edu and Arteta summer. And none of those have particularly joined up thinking or a shared vision or idea of what this team is supposed to be. And I think that is, kind of where we are, that we've actually spent a lot of money.
Yeah.
But just not effectively or efficiently.
So what is required here? Because I can see it, I'm sure you see it on your timeline. There are rumblings and stirrings about Arteta. And I get it. I do get it. I get why people have doubts. I really want to believe in him, and I like the way he communicates, and I feel like if we could play football half as good as he talks, we'd be fucking top of the league, right? So there are question marks. At the same time, I'm aware we went all in on a young manager who's inexperienced and has got a lot to learn and is learning on the job in a very difficult job. I'm cognizant of all those things. But you're judged on results on a week-to-week basis. That's how football works. And I can see there's a long term and there's a medium term, but there's also a short term. You have to be able to manage the short term as well as those things. But do we need, as a football club, consistency in who we have making the decisions when it comes to building the squad, even if right now we're finding it a little bit difficult to buy into what's happening? Like, would the worst thing be, let's bring in another manager and another director of football or another sporting director to implement his vision on the club, which might be at odds with what has been put in place so far? Like, we can't keep scrambling, can we?
We can't keep going back to the drawing board. I don't think so. The caveat to that, I mean, listen, I that's my opinion. I'm someone who sort of feels we require a period of stability and a measure of patience to kind of see this vision realised before we can make a true objective judgment on it. My concern is Edu the guy to do that? It's interesting that Huss Fahmi's now gone. Elements of the regime that were associated with Raul, have been dismantled, but Edu is very much still there. And he's clearly made enough of an impression internally that they kind of think, well, okay, we're going to stick with Edu, we're going to make him part of this team moving forward. That's a big show of faith, because his job is to be the guy with the vision for the technical side for the next 3 to 5 years. I guess we have to let him do that job.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard Tim Stillman talk on the Arsenal Vision podcast about, the difficulties of doing the job that Edu did in Brazil. Yeah. For the Brazilian national team and the role that he had there. It was a different job than the one he has here at Arsenal. But, in Brazilian football, you're dealing with an awful lot of things, on the pitch and off the pitch and everything else. So, there is obviously some character there and there's experience there and everything else. I like I said, there are question marks over him for me, and I'm not particularly convinced. But, unless things go rapidly downhill in a very significant way, it's hard to think that we're ever going to get back to where we want to get to unless we give something time.
Yeah.
And look, it's a really difficult one. After a couple of really bad results and everything else, it's easy to see the downside of everything and forget that there might be some upsides. But I just, I think you can have doubts and also think that it's reasonable for a manager to get more time and to have more backing in the transfer window to try and build the kind of team that he wants. But, at the same time, I realize and recognize that when part of the team that you want is Willian, people are going to have doubts.
Yeah, absolutely. And Arsenal haven't necessarily assembled a squad that appears to be on a timeline of, well, in 3 years, we'll be right there, you know? They've signed a lot of players to deals who are a bit older than that. So that's the contradiction. And I think if there was, in 2006 or whatever it was, Arsenal and Wenger managed to sell an idea of, we're not there right now, but we will be tomorrow. And I think if that was evidently the thinking in the transfer market, then I think people could buy into that. But there's not been that kind of joined up approach. And I think that's why people are frustrated. But I tend to agree with you. I'm someone who's like, let's let this play out. Let's let this, let's see how this bears fruit or not before we make a judgment. But I know there's a lot of people who don't feel like that. And they're like, this isn't working. Let's make a change.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I can see that side of things. I just wonder if you keep making changes, if you're ever going to find the stability you need to build the kind of team that you need. I know. And look, I'm sort of maybe projecting a little bit or being overly optimistic. But I think managers do need time unless they absolutely and completely demonstrate that there's no point in that. And I think there have been, there's been a success. There's been a trophy win. There's been, there have been some good signings. I think, like I said, Partey is a signing we should all be very happy about. He's a really good player. And Gabriel so far looks good. And Kieran Tierney is fucking great. And I love him. And Saka is a superb talent. And Martinelli is a great young player, who hopefully will have back soon as well. So there are some things that we should be retain some hope over. But, it's difficult at the moment when things look or feel kind of, we're stuck. We're stuck. We need something to push us out of where we are right now.
Yeah. You mentioned him there. I mean, John Batterson on Twitter said, was Tierney's reaction at the end good to see, or was it a worrying sign that one of our best players is quickly becoming frustrated with our form and the way we're playing?
He was frustrated with the play acting, wasn't he? I think so. I think that's what that was. I mean, look, I said it on Twitter. I like that character. I like players being pissed off and what have you. Some people have come back to me about the Guendouzi thing after Brighton. I suppose the thing to say there is that the reason Guendouzi was dropped from the team wasn't because of what he did at the end there by grabbing Mopé by the throat. There were other things that went on behind the scenes that led to his omission from the team. So it wasn't the same thing. And I don't think Mikel Arteta will be annoyed at Tierney for his reaction. I suppose it is a demonstration of frustration as well, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think Tierney's got that character anyway. Do you know what I mean? I really do, and I
also think, by the way, Tierney is kind of able to back up the end of game frustration with the in-game performances and consistency that I don't think Guendouzi showed.
I mean, I agree. I really like Tierney, and I think he's been a really good signing so far when he's been fit. And I don't mind what I saw at all at the end of the game. And I think, and also I don't have an objection to people like Ceballos, acting as a peacekeeper for once, getting in the way. And I just think, it didn't even escalate, did it really? He just went over there, he got grabbed, he turned around, he walked away.
Tried to go back again, got grabbed again.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. I mean, I saw someone saying they didn't like that Xhaka was kind of protecting the Leeds player.
I didn't. Yeah, look, you can look at it two ways, right? You can look at it as Xhaka protecting his own player from a post-game red card, perhaps, because Tierney's a really important part of this team. So you could look at it from that point of view. I just wasn't 100% on board with the way that Xhaka pushed Tierney away.
Right.
That didn't sit right with me. Like, I think he was at the heart of it, trying to protect him from doing something that, you know, he might regret in the heat of the moment. At the same time, though, with his arm around the opposition player and then pushing your own teammate away, I don't know, just wasn't quite on board with that.
I think it's just trying to prevent trouble, personally.
Yeah, I think so too. But I just didn't like the way it happened.
I think if he doesn't, maybe he's not doing his job.
Yeah, maybe. Look, I'm not trying to give Xhaka a hard time. It's just a personal thing.
Yeah.
It's just
sort of physical semantics.
Yeah, exactly. And just to go back to what we were talking about earlier, it was from DTDC Gooner, at DTDC Gooner, who says, we were all excited to get a bunch of deadweight off our books this summer in Ozil, Mustafi and Luiz. Have we basically just replaced that with new deadweight in Willian, Pepe and Cedric? So yeah, you know, but just going back to the squad management thing, you know.
Yeah. It's not quite as expensive, but yeah, it's not great.
Yeah.
Okay, question. Let's have a look here. We did the Bellerin one. I'm sure there were a lot about set pieces.
Oh yeah, well I've got a couple here actually. Raul Singal, who's at Royal Gooner, Your Majesty, he says, what was up with our set piece ability yesterday? All of the deliveries right from the start were horrible. And I like this one from Fargo Boyle, who's at Jobs OB, who says, what is the set piece coach teaching? Is he working from home?
Well, I think we know what he's probably teaching. I think he's probably teaching... It's a bit like Arsenal more generally, isn't it? The emphasis is more on the defensive. We've not conceded a goal from a set piece. There's only 2 teams in the Premier League who've done that this season. So, you know, I think it does seem that Mikel Arteta is inherently a guy who's kind of safety, solidity first, and it seems like Andreas Jorgensen's priority has been that, and we do seem pretty solid in that regard. I do also think, I'm sure somebody asked about this, let me just have a quick look. I can't find it now, apologies. But somebody asked, and I think it's right, with our corners, we seem to hit the first man so frequently that I think we are actually targeting the near post. I think we are aiming for the near post, aren't we? Or you're not sure?
Maybe. I just think that if that's what we are doing, we're trying to do it too much. You know, play the odds a little bit. The delivery to the front man or to the near post, you know, can be devastating when you get it right, but it's, you know, it's a long shot, if you like. Put the ball into a dangerous area in the box. I think there was one yesterday, like we had a free kick. It could have been when Ceballos got fouled. And there was a free kick just to the left of centre, and Pepe stood over it and Willian stood over it, and Pepe took it, sort of outswinger towards the back post. And I'm looking at that, and I'm looking at it thinking, if this was a free kick against us, what would I hate? And I'd hate an in-swinging delivery into a dangerous area where the keeper maybe doesn't know if he should come or not. Or it's one of those where if you just sort of curl it in, it might go through a bunch of players and that kind of stuff. And I just wondered why Willian didn't take it. If he's the sort of set piece guy. Same with the one that's...
some important business matters to attend to.
In Dubai, yeah.
Point. Yeah.
Yeah, he was just thinking about the fucking sprinkly salt meat wanker fucker. You know, but I mean, that simple things like that can make you a bit more dangerous. You know, make the opposition worry about what it is that you're going to do. Because you could see it yesterday. After about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, Leeds were comfortable. They were comfortable because they knew that the questions that Arsenal were going to ask them on the night were easy to answer. And I think when you're struggling from open play, make the most of your set pieces. And, I'm not saying it was a bad delivery from Pepe, but it's a much easier ball to defend as a defender and as a team than that in-swinging one that Willian should have taken. And Reece Nelson's corner kicks and free kicks, I'm sorry, I like Reece Nelson. I think he's a young player of some talent and some promise, but there is literally no excuse for a professional player to take 4 or 5 set pieces as poorly as he took them, even if you are going for the first man.
Yeah.
There's no reason why a professional footballer shouldn't be able to put a cross in or put a free kick in or a corner kick into, somewhere between the penalty spot and the 6-yard box. It's just infuriating. It drives me fucking mad that we don't have somebody who can take a corner, take a fucking free kick. All it takes is practice to produce consistent deliveries.
What you got to remember is Andreas Jorgensen is very busy trying to teach Hector Bellerin how to take a throw in. That is where the main focus of his energy is right now. His hands are tied. He's just desperately trying to teach Hector Bellerin to take a throw. No, I agree. There's nothing more infuriating, is there, than when you get yourself a set piece or a corner, and you've been under the cosh and you think this is a chance for us to get a goal and you hit the first man. I mean, as a supporter, there is absolutely nothing more infuriating than that.
No.
And it doesn't feel that difficult. I mean...
It isn't that difficult. That's the thing. No. That's the thing. It is not that difficult. You're not asking them to do the most outrageous piece of skill in the game. It's literally kick a ball with your good foot 20 yards, 30 yards into an area where your teammates can maybe attack it. And not
teams all down the divisions can do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's maddening, absolutely maddening. And actually, yesterday we had a bit of a height advantage over Leeds in some areas. We had Gabriel there, we had Rob Holding. It felt like we piled the box full. It felt like we fancied our chances, and yet we didn't have the delivery.
Sorry, I'm sitting here fuming.
What next?
James Morgan, who's at Mullet Rider, says, did you see any green shoots from us playing Aubameyang through the middle? Would you play a similar formation against Wolves?
What did you make of the performance of Joe Willock in behind?
I thought he didn't really take the chance. I was glad to see him in the team, but I don't think it was his best game by any stretch of the imagination. So, no. I think, there were opportunities for, himself and for Pepe to impress. Did we have one here? I think it was on the Discord, and it might just apply to this. Let's see. I can't remember where it is.
There were a couple of moments. I think he always offers you that kind of threat in transition just because he has that running power. But there were a couple of moments where he was a bit clumsy on the ball.
There was one moment, wasn't there, where he was on the ball and he was looking for Willian to make a run down the left-hand side.
Yeah.
And it was like, fucking make a run so I can play a pass to you. Instead, Willian kind of just hung around and got under his feet. And there were a couple of moments where he tried to get forward. So I always like that intent with him, but I can't say that he played particularly well. But the question here is, we'll come back to the Wolves thing from the Discord. Sam Kazi said, should we just stop trying to analyse our players' individual performances until the manager fixes his system? He says the odds of Aubameyang, Lacazette, Willian and Pepe all becoming terrible at the same time are slim. Even taking into account some of the I guess, individual issues that those players might have.
Absolutely. I do think that's true. I think that's true.
So I just want to give that in the context of the Joe Willock thing, and even to an extent the Reece Nelson thing, because, he came on at halftime, and we don't quite know how he might have done with 11 players on the pitch. So it's difficult. I mean, I can roast him for his set piece delivery, but the overall performance, I don't think he was any better or worse than anybody else.
No. I think I think it will be. I think he should try a similar shape against Wolves. To be honest, I don't think it's kind of a fair test really in this game, and I think that we've not got reason to chuck this out. It's not like this was any worse particularly than anything else we've tried. So I would be inclined to give it another go. I wonder. I guess we'll find out, won't we? If Joe Willock's involved on Thursday, that will tell us something. You imagine? Yeah,
I imagine he will be, and he should be. I think he should be involved on Thursday. It doesn't mean he can't play on
Sunday.
On Sunday, or be involved in the squad at least on Sunday.
True.
But
the Sunday night fixtures.
Another fucking 7:15 one. Third time lucky?
Maybe. Gosh, they've not been the most fun so far.
No, they haven't. But I mean, would you stick with Aubameyang up front? Is it a thing that you would like to see again, even though it didn't particularly work against Leeds? Is it one of those things where you can go, well, didn't work against Leeds, you're never going to do this again?
Well, I mean, the one thing I didn't consider then is that obviously you're without Pepe now. So
yeah,
you have to think about how you construct the flanks. If you don't have Pepe, I mean, sure, Saka can come in for him. And maybe that is what will happen. Maybe it'll be Saka on the left and Willian on the right if he's fit. But if Willian's not fit, I think there's every chance you'll see Lacazette, and Aubameyang and Saka either side. Here's a tough one for you. What would you rather? Would you rather see Willian starts and Lacazette and Aubameyang through the middle, or would you rather see Lacazette start and Aubameyang on the wing?
So does that mean Lacazette and Willian start?
No, in that version, Saka plays from the right. I suppose I'm basically asking you, who would you rather would start out of Lacazette and Willian? Because I guess the chances are one will if Pepe is out.
Oh, there's a choice, isn't it?
You can have Reece Nelson. You can have Reece Nelson's corners again.
I think my antipathy for Willian is such that I would rather see Lacazette start.
Right, okay.
Because, I like the idea of Aubameyang in the middle, but we can score goals with him on the left, and he has scored a lot of goals from the left.
And we can get him in the middle more,
Yeah. But that's a terrible choice.
I know, but, that is Mikel's choice,
that's
potentially.
Where we are, yeah.
Thanks to Pepe's suspension.
Right.
It's frustrating. That's why it's so frustrating, You sort of you take a step in one direction and now you got to go
2 steps
back
back
the other way.
Yeah. Are we done?
I think we're done, aren't we? Yeah.
I think we're done.
Sure.
I think we're done. We do have Europa League, and then we've got Wolves at the weekend, and then of course there is a North London derby the weekend after that. So look, there is a very, very real need to at least be able to start producing results, and a lot still for Mikel Arteta and his staff and the players to do. So fingers crossed they have a busy week in training. We don't get any more bad news regarding injuries. Who are we waiting on? Saka?
Saka, Willian. I mean, I think we think Partey's going to be okay, don't we? We should get Louise back.
Yeah. He was absent because
his wife's giving birth. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we should get him back. I guess if we have him back, we probably have to not have Ceballos. They probably can't be in the same room together for too long. One in, one out. It'll be. It's an interesting period, isn't it? Coming up, a lot of games.
Yeah.
6 games in the next 3 weeks. So they'll have to juggle it a bit.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, thank you.
We'll win on Thursday, though. We win the Europa League games, don't we?
Yeah,
That's how it works.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, if we don't...
Oh, all hell break loose.
My God. What do we know of the conditions? Is it going to be like fucking freezing, or
let's have a look.
do we have winter anymore now that the world is essentially on fire?
Is mould at a place? Yes, I think it is. Rainy, it sounds like. It's rainy and 6 degrees.
That's all right. So shouldn't be that tricky. Shouldn't be that tricky. Okay, well, look, as ever, folks, thank you for being here. Thanks for sharing in the, what do we call this? Problem shared is a problem halved and all that. So
absolutely.
Hopefully all your problems have been halved, like your pears, I guess. Don't know where I'm going with this. We will obviously do something in midweek, of course, or towards the end of the week with an Arsecast. What time is that game on? 6 o'clock?
6
It's
o'clock.
an early one, okay. So we'll have Arsecast for you on Friday. Until then, keep whatever little bit of faith you have left. I'm not saying it's going to be all right. In fact, it could get a lot worse. Now I'm being doomy here, aren't I?
Merry Christmas, everybody.
All right, look, I'll leave it there. I don't know what to say to finish this one other than goodbye.
I think that's it, isn't it?
I think so.
Bye-bye.